Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Hope you're having a great day. And I figured since the college football season, the regular season is over with, and the playoffs are about to start in a couple weeks, I figured why not do my first mock draft of the year. So with no further ado, I figured let's get into it. Obviously, no trades. I won't probably start doing trades until like after the Super Bowl, just because we don't know the official order until obviously after the regular season and the playoffs happen. So no trades in this one. But starting off number one with the Titans, um, Tennessee, an interesting spot. Yeah, obviously have Cam Ward, so aren't going to take a quarterback. They probably would trade back to a QB needy team: the Jets, Raiders, Browns, the Rams, Cardinals, um, who are picking in the top 10, who maybe would need a quarterback. But for this exercise, obviously no trades. I'm gonna go with my number one player, Arvell Reese. It's him and Ruben Bain for kind of the top overall player in my eyes, but Reese has just been, I feel like, even though, Bain started off the year great, I feel like Reese has kind of been, throughout the year, been great, and obviously we'll see him in the college football playoff and see how he plays against some of the best competition in the league. Um, but he's my current top player in Tennessee who kind of just needs an impact player. And maybe if they trade down, they could take like Jordan Tyson or one of the wide receivers. But I think if they're gonna pick one with no trades, you just go best player available, going Arvell Reese. Number two, the Giants. Same thing. Have Jackson Dart, who seems to be the franchise guy. Um, so in this exercise, I'm going with a wide receiver, and there's kind of three top guys, and I'm gonna go with Jordan Tyson out of Arizona State. I know the injury concerns are there, um, but he's just, in my opinion, the overall best wide receiver. And I feel like if you're the Giants, needing a top level player, I feel like you give Jackson Dart another weapon because the defense, for the most part, I feel like is really good. They just need a better defensive coordinator. And I feel like, you're going to have Neighbors back. You're going to have Cam Scadaboo, Dart. Why not give them another weapon in Jordan Tyson? Obviously, I think they would trade down most likely. With no trades, I think they go Tyson, who is the best receiver. It's just a lot of people have injury concerns because he has had injuries throughout his college career. But I think, if healthy, which a lot of the times guys who have injury concerns coming out, they end up, playing really well because when they're healthy, they're really good. Moving on to number three, the Saints. This is an interesting pick because Tyler Shuck, he's played decent so far. Um, had the bad game against the Falcons, but has had a couple good games. Obviously, the team around him isn't the greatest. Um, and I feel like I could see them going quarterback. But I'm gonna have them go Ruben Bain out of Miami. I think you could make an argument for another receiver, but I feel like bringing in an impactful defender, you know, being able to bring a guy like Bain, who, as an overall player, maybe the best in the class, just as a player, not necessarily um but and I think with Cam Jordan getting up there in age, with a lot of the guys on that defense getting older, maybe bring in a guy like Bain who can be that next guy up, learn from Cameron Jordan, and take over and give this Saints team a pass rush they haven't really had probably since like Trey Hendrickson was there when Cameron Jordan was younger and he was playing much better. So yeah, Moving on to the fourth overall pick, the Raiders now are up. Vegas. Obviously, it's been a tough season. 2-10. Probably gonna have a new head coach alongside John Spytek as the GM. And won't this? And I'm probably gonna go quarterback just because Geno Smith is still under contract in 2026, but you have an out in 2027. So you can draft this guy, have him develop behind Smith, and then take over. And I'll go with my top QB in Dante Moore. I was a huge Dante Moore guy in the offseason, even though most people weren't really sure what he was going to be after he played a little bit at UCLA and then not really much last year. But he has been phenomenal on the Ducks team, once again contending. And obviously, we'll see him in the playoffs, see how he does against some of the best competition. But he's my top QB ahead of two guys I think most people throughout the year probably had as 1 and 2, but he's my top guy. And I feel like the Raiders, if they're like if they're picking that high and one of the QBs is there, you got to take him. And Dante Moore, if he does declare, which we saw with guys like Drew Aller, Garrett Nussmeier last year, probably should have declared because in a weaker QB class, and then those guys just did not play as well this year, and it hurt themselves. Obviously, Aller injured and was out for the year after like 6 games. But yeah, like if you're a top quarterback prospect, really top prospect in any position, you probably should enter the draft instead of coming back because you're most likely gonna ruin your stock. Moving on to the Browns. Interesting year. I just saw that Deshaun Watson apparently has been activated off the pup list and can return to practice, which crazy. I mean, what if the Browns just throw him in late in the year to maybe have a team? Who knows? But Cleveland's looking to the future, and I think they go with their quarterback of the future, Mendoza. He's most likely going to win the Heisman. Him or Diego Pavia, it seems like. Mendoza has been amazing. I mean, the Cal transfer, apparently he was committed to Yale and then wanted to play FBS football, so went to Cal Berkeley. Very intelligent man. And the Browns team that needs to find their quarterback. I know Shador might be a long-term starter. I think he can be, but I don't think it's going to be on the Browns. I think Cleveland more than likely will have a new regime, at least a new head coach, um, in 2026. And I feel like a Browns team that needs to bring in a new starting QB to maybe hopefully give this team some um, potential for the future. Mendoza, in my opinion, is the second best quarterback, maybe even the best quarterback in this um, class, and I think he goes here to the Browns. Number 6, the Commanders. It's been a rough season for Washington. Obviously, not the season they hoped for after a huge year last year. Probably hoping that one of the QBs falls, so maybe a team would come trade up and they can get some draft capital because they used a lot of it last year trading for Tunsil and Debo and a lot of the guys. Um, so let's hope Washington can build around Daniels for the future. For this pick, I'm gonna go sure. I'm gonna go with Caleb Downs. I know safety isn't the most highly valued position, but if you're Washington and you just need a great player to build it, bring into this team on a defense that is not very talented outside of like a couple guys, Caleb Downs, I feel like, is the prototypical guy to bring in. And I feel like it makes sense. Moving on to the Jets. Huge win on Sunday. beating the Falcons, and they have a couple games coming up on the stretch they could win, and we could see them later on in the draft order if they start winning these games down the stretch. Now picking at 7, I could see them using their 2 first-round picks next year, or their 2 first-rounders this year to possibly trade up. But I think with one QB that is probably going to go in the top 15 and Ty Simpson available, I think they go with him. He hasn't been as great as he was earlier in the year. Still great, and I mean him and Dante Moore could easily go back to college, and then we could be left with Mendoza and a bunch of other guys. But I feel like if you're Simpson and Moore, you're going to be top draft picks. Risk coming back when you know you're going to be a top pick and you're going to be making a lot of money. I know they make money now, in college, but it's not as much money as like a top 10 pick would make. Moving on to the Cardinals, obviously probably hoping maybe one of the QBs drops because they're most likely going to move on from Kyler Murray and have it out after the contract. But with none of them available, I feel like you just got to go with a position of need. And with not the greatest offensive tackle class, I think we go with Francis Mauigoa, the tackle out of Miami, who I think is at least top 15, top 10 player in this class. Regardless, he's my top tackle, and a Cardinals team that hoping to more than likely have a new coach next year, hoping to find that quarterback of the future. Why not bring in some protection alongside Paris Johnson? I know what wide receiver could be a need because Marvin Harrison Jr. hasn't really lived up to the billing, and Michael Wilson has his injury concerns, but I feel like Mauigoa, the right pick here. Yeah. Moving on to the Rams. This is the Falcons pick that Atlanta traded to LA, which is crazy. Early on in the season, it looked like the Rams weren't going to get a top pick, but obviously Atlanta's lost 6 of 7, so pick has fallen back. The Rams, maybe if one of the quarterbacks slips down to 9, I could see them going with a quarterback, but I'm going to go with quarterback out of LSU, Mansour Delane. I feel like LA for a while since turning away Jalen Ramsey hasn't really had elite shutdown guys. And I feel like Delane, who is my top corner, Jamal McCoy, if he had played this year, then I would have, and if he had played well like he did in 2024, I would have been like, hey, he's a top pick. But he hasn't played at all this year after tearing his ACL back in January. And Delane, who was a monster hit by LSU in the transfer portal, I think can easily be a top 10 pick. And for a Rams team that is really set in the defensive front 7, I feel like adding a guy on the back end when they have some decent guys, but they don't really have like great guys, I feel like Delane can really help out. Moving on to the Bengals. I mean, Cincinnati, interesting year so far. They start out 2-0, but then they lose 8 of 9, and it seems like the season's over with. Then they pull off a huge win against the Ravens, and it's like, hey, maybe this Bengals team, if they go on a run, currently picked at 10, I feel like they just have to improve this defense, which has looked better, but I feel like they still need to invest more onto it. That's why I'm going with Peter Woods, who hasn't been as dominant as he was his freshman and sophomore year, but still has been really good this year for a disappointing Clemson team. And I feel like Woods, unlike his teammate TJ Parker, will still be a consensus top 15 player and will go in that range. And a Bengals defense that, if Trey Hendrickson isn't there, is going to need to be able to get after the quarterback, get pressure on that D line. Woods makes the most sense. Moving on to the Vikings. An interesting pick here because the Vikings obviously hoped they were going to be in the playoff contention. Obviously hasn't worked out. Um, Mainly due to bad QB play, but they've had injuries all over that offensive line, and it's really hurt them. But I'm gonna go with. Ugh, I'm gonna go with. I'm gonna go edge rusher with Texas Tech's David Bailey. I know it's not a huge need, but outside of Jonathan Grenard, I know Andrew Van Ginkel um has been very good, but outside of Grenard, they don't really have great like edge rush presence. They have a lot of guys who can move around, and I feel like Bailey, who seems like the consensus, like second best edge rusher behind Ruben Bain, and if you consider Arvell Reese, which I do, so my third edge rusher, but some people might still consider Reese a linebacker. But Bailey, I feel like can come in, help out this defense that is still very good, and I feel like can give them more help out. Moving on to the Dolphins, a team that has started to win some games down the stretch too. Obviously knocked themselves out of the QB market, and I feel like Miami they could have a lot of question marks on this team next year. Who's going to be the head coach if Mike McDaniel is fired? I don't think he should be, but you never know. But who's going to be the long-term quarterback? They have a lot of issues. I'm going to say I feel like you help out this offense if line and go Spencer Vano from Utah. I just feel like the Dolphins need to protect whether it's Tua or whoever the long-term guy is in Miami. They have, tried to bring in some pieces with Patrick Paul, Jonas Savaiinaia, but Fano, um, an elite tackle, or not elite tackle, but a great tackle and a Dolphins team that very much has needed offensive line help ever since they traded away Laramie Tunsil. You can get that with Fano. What are the Chiefs? Who knows if they're going to be picking at 13 or if they somehow make it to the playoffs. But right now, I'm going to go with Notre Dame's Jeremiah Love. I just think it's a match made in heaven. Chiefs needed to. Um, the Chiefs probably should have traded for Breece Hall. I know they wanted a third, but the running back room has not been great for the Chiefs. And if Jeremiah Love is on the board, I think the Chiefs have to immediately get that pick in because if you give this Chiefs offense a running back who is a bell cow back like Jeremiah Love, I think he'll be able to help this offense out and make it more dynamic, make it harder to game plan around instead of having Isaiah Pacheco and Kareem Hunt, whoever else they have running the ball. Moving on to the Steelers, obviously hoped a quarterback would fall here, but in this scenario it did not. I think you go with their second biggest need wide receiver in Ohio State's Carnell Tate. I just think they whiffed on trading away George Pickens. I know they weren't going to pay him, but it's like you could have at least had him and Pickens for at least one season and given this offense some juice. And I think this offense, outside of DK Metcalf, is just a bunch of tight ends. Jalen, like, they don't really have any other great receivers. And you got to give whoever the long term quarterback is a chance to be able to have players on the outside who can be able to help him out, make plays, and Carnell Tate is that type of guy. But on to the Panthers, it's been a very interesting season. Obviously, the ups, the downs, but I think you just help out this defense. Going with Cassius Howe from Texas A&M, he has been a major riser throughout the season. and a Panthers team that the defense has looked a lot better, you know, ever since early on in the season. And I think you just continue to add pieces to that defense. So, you can be able to, because the offense, for the most part, I feel like is taken care of. So I feel like they just kind of go defense, help out this defense to be able to continue to make plays. And yeah, went on to the Cowboys. This is their pick. And obviously, early on in the season, Dallas was like maybe a top 10 team. It's like they've slowly been able to win games and make it down. And I think they just have to help out this defense. I'm gonna go with Sonny Styles, the linebacker from Ohio State, the true linebacker. Arvell Reese has more so been an edge rusher, an outside linebacker. Styles is more of an inside linebacker, middle linebacker, and a Cowboys team that hasn't really had a great linebacker since Sean Lee retired. Obviously, they thought Michael Parsons was going to be that, but then he's more of an edge rusher. Um, and Sonny Styles can be that middle of the guy, you know, covering running backs, been able to play well. And Dallas defense that has started to play better after the addition of Quinn and Williams. I think you continue to add to this defense to make it a formidable unit. Moving on to the Lions, um, currently outside the playoffs. It has been a very interesting year. They will obviously need to bring in an offensive coordinator because John Morton clearly hasn't worked out if Dan Campbell took over the plays. But I think if you're the Lions, you have to help out this defense. I'm gonna go Kendrick Falk out of Auburn. I just think they've kind of needed that secondary pass rusher behind Aiden Hutchinson. Ever since they drafted Hutch in 2022, they've kind of needed that second guy next to him, and they haven't really addressed it. They've kind of just brought in these veterans or these young guys who were like later round picks or undrafted guys. It hasn't really worked out, and I think the Lions need to invest into the edge rusher position alongside Aiden Hutchinson if they want to be able to contend in an NFC North that is very competitive year in and year out. And I think it makes the most sense. Going on to the Texans, Houston, after a slow start, has looked very good the last couple of weeks. The defense, which we all knew was great, has been really helped out by an offense not making many mistakes. And I think you just got to hope one of the top O linemen is available. I'll go with the guy from Penn State. I don't know how to pronounce his name just yet, so hopefully, I will hear it and be able to say it in later mock drafts. But for right now, he's just the guard from Penn State because while you could say tackle, I feel like the tackles have been pretty good. I feel like it's been the interior of the offensive line, and I think you just got to bring in a guy to help him out. Went on to the Ravens. Very interesting year. Obviously, injuries have played a factor. And the Ravens, obviously, I feel like have a lot of issues. And I think one of them, which has been for a while since they drafted Lamar, is never really getting him a true wide receiver one. They've kind of always had the philosophy of bringing in these older veteran guys or because their draft picks have never really worked out outside of Zay Flowers, but I think you got to invest in the position. And with a guy like Makai Lemon sitting right here, you got to take him. He is a top 10 player at least in the class. Arguably could be the top wide receiver when it's all said and done. And Lemon, who kind of fits that Jackson Smith and Jigba type, you know, not the biggest, not the fastest guy, mainly a slot guy in college, but what you've seen in Jigba when he's given a wide receiver one role, he looked phenomenal. I feel like Makai Lemon, kind of like another USC guy in Amon St. Brown, I feel like Lemon can become that type of guy, and the Ravens, who have needed wide receivers since Lamar has been drafted, you got to invest in that position if you want to give the Ravens an opportunity to win the Super Bowl. And I think Lemon makes the most sense. Going on to the Bucks at 20. This is an interesting pick because Tampa, I feel like, always seems to draft well. So you don't really know what position could be a need, but I feel like one position that's been a need for a while that they haven't really addressed, I feel like it's been linebacker. I feel like they've never really tried to address it because Levante David's been there so long. They tried to do it with Devin White and that didn't really work out, but I feel like if CJ Allen is on the board, I feel like you have to take him. He has been banged up this year, and we'll see how he is in the combine and all that. But I feel like the Bucks have to figure out who that long term guy is after Levante David. And I think CJ Allen is the perfect guy. We don't know the Bills, who have been up and down, some huge wins, some bad losses. And I feel like this team very much has invested in this defense a lot, and it seems to have not worked. But I feel like they got to bring in a wide receiver to really help out Josh Allen. I know they tried it with Keon Coleman, but that hasn't really worked out the greatest. But I feel like a guy like KC Concepcion at A&M can really be a difference maker for this Bills team. Give Josh Allen a reliable go-to guy, kind of like what I've been saying with like Lamar. Even though Allen had Stephon Diggs for a while, you got to give these you got to give these elite quarterbacks a top guy to throw to. I know both teams have great tight ends, but you need a top tier wide receiver if you want to be able to make defenses get hurt from trying to blitz you. And I feel like you give Josh Allen a guy like Casey Concepcion, that offense really takes its stride out, and we could see the Bills' offense from last year but better in 2026. Moving on to the Eagles, I mean, a very disappointing year. I mean, this year has been worse, honestly, than 2020 three, because at least that year they started 10-1, and well, a lot of those wins were close. They were at least winning a lot of games. This year, it has been a disappointing season, but it's mainly because a lot of the moves, a lot of the guys they let go in the offseason on that defensive side have hurt them a lot. And I feel like they need to address um the corner position. I like Avion Terrell, obviously the younger brother of AJ Terrell from both went to Clemson, and Terrell not as big as his brother, but is a tackling machine. And I think the Eagles have Quinion Mitchell, they have Cooper DeJean. You need another guy on the outside to reliably be able to shut down wide receivers, especially all the wide receivers they have in division. Terrell can give you that and more. Moving on to the Jets' second pick, obviously they selected Ty Simpson um, at 7. Now at 23, I feel like they do have a lot of needs, but I feel like you just go. I feel like the Jets, their second big, if they've already gone quarterback, I feel like you just go best player available. And for me, that's TJ Parker, outstanding edge rusher from Clemson. Parker just hasn't really lived up to the bill, just like his teammate Peter Woods. Like neither guy really has lived up to the preseason potential. This has still been really good. Parker, I feel like, has been gone down in production since his sophomore year in 2024. That's why he's going a little bit lower, but still a first round caliber player in a Jets team that I feel like if they go QB with their first round pick, with their first pick, with this Colts pick, I feel like you just go best player available, bring in a guy to help out, whether it's offense or defense, and it'll work out. Moving on to the Niners, a team that banged up but has still been really good. And I feel like they've been neglecting this position for a while. And you just got to go with Caden Proctor out of Alabama. Hasn't been great so far this year. I feel like a lot of people expected him to be amazing, but he's still been good. And the Niners, who have kind of neglected, bringing in guys on the O line for really a couple of years, they kind of just relied on the guys they've had. And I feel like Trent Williams is gonna retire soon, and the rest of the unit is not very good. I feel like bringing a guy like Proctor, who can be a tackle, can be a guard, I feel like that can really help them out for the long term future of this team. Moving on to the Chargers. Well, I think could also go tackle just because Slater more so, who's had an injury history. Um, so I could see them going with a tackle who they first place at guard, and then if one of those guys goes down, kind of like what they did with Joe Alt, who coming out was a left tackle. You put him at right tackle because you have Slater at left tackle. But then Slater goes down, so they put Alt back at left tackle. But I feel like they just got to um, help out the interior, and there's not really any good options. So I'm gonna go with Jermon McCoy, who I still think is a first round talent. He hasn't played so far this year, like I said earlier in the video. But I think a Chargers team that has relied on a lot of the guys they brought in and haven't really needed to address positions. I feel like corner is one of those positions where it's like you can take a shot on Jermon McCoy, who knows, could be healthy and could be playing well. We'll just have to see. But yeah, moving on to the Browns, who obviously I had taking Fernando Mendoza. Now with their second pick, I feel like you bring in a wide receiver. Yeah, sorry about that. I feel like they should bring in a wide receiver to help out. And that's going to be Denzel Boston out of Washington. Like, they do have some decent guys. Jerry Jeudy, still been good. Cedric Tillman, I feel like has been decent. But I feel like Denzel Boston, who I think is like 6'4", 210, right? Let me see. Yeah, 6'4", 209. He's really been good, and I feel like you got to give Mendoza an elite guy. And with two picks, I feel like the Browns could invest in a QB wide receiver duo to really help out this team. Moving on to the Cowboys, who we had taking Sonny Styles with their first round pick, first round pick, fair to say. Now with the Packers pick, I'm gonna go with another defensive guy and an edge rusher, Romello Heights, out of Texas Tech, David Bailey's teammate. Height has been really good. Obviously, playing next to Bailey really helps out. But I think this Cowboys team that still needs edge rusher presence, still needs to help out. And I mean, I can see corner being a need. Colt Hood, Brandon Cisse have been great. Keith Abney from Arizona State has been really good. Chandler Rivers, I think, has a lot of potential, but I really wouldn't take those guys right here. I could see safety. AJ Hossie, Dylan Beeman, Kamari Ramsey, all great, but I don't think they're first round talents. Um, I think Romello Height, Dallas needs to bring in edge rusher presence. And been trading away Micah. They've kind of relied on rotation of guys and got older guys they've signed, young guys that they've drafted. But I think Height and this pick makes sense. Moving on for the Seahawks, a team that kind of has a complete roster. I feel like they don't really have many holes, but I feel like One hole they do have that might need to be fixed is going to be another corner, just because Tariq Woolen is going to most likely leave in free agency, and Colton Hood, the other Tennessee corner, who I think has played tremendously this year, and obviously we didn't see both those guys on the field, which was sad. Because it would have been cool to see both guys on the field to see which one was better. But I feel like Hood, still a first round talent, and a Seattle team that might lose Tariq Woolen, are going to need another guy. And Colin Hood, I think, fits right in with that Mike Manel defense. 29, the Rams. Obviously, we have them going with Mansour Delane with their first round pick. I'm going to go with Caleb Lomu, the Utah tackle. They've kind of needed a Rob Havenstein replacement for a while. And I feel like, while the tackle class isn't the greatest, Caleb Lomu, I feel like is still a first round talent. And the Rams, who could go QB here if they want to draft Matthew Stafford's successor, I feel like they go Caleb Lomu in this one. Denver, it seems kind of obvious. I'm going to go Kenyon Sadiq, Oregon. Evan Ingram has not worked out as a free agent acquisition, and that was shown so much when he was dropping so many passes on Sunday Night Football against the Commanders. And, I mean, Sean Payton always relies on a top tight end target for his quarterbacks and the offense in general, with like Jimmy Graham and obviously later Jawan Johnson and others. And I feel like Kenyon Sadiq fits that mold and could be a great target for a Broncos team that has struggled on offense. But again, moving on to the Bears, which is crazy to say Chicago down at 31. They're usually picking top 15 at least. 31 because obviously they have the best record in the NFC. I'm gonna go with Caden McDonald, the Ohio State defensive lineman. They've kind of not had the greatest defensive line, and while edge rusher obviously is a need, there's not many guys I truly would rely on to go right now in the first round. I feel like interior offensive line is where to go. And then finally, the Pats, 32nd overall. But this is where they used to be with Brady all the time. I'm going to go Brandon Csack, corner out of South Carolina, to finish it out. But yeah, that is my mock draft 1.0 2025. And yeah, hope you guys have a great day. Hope you guys hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell. And I'll see you guys in my next video. But until then, bye.